If I could only make one type of soap, you might be surprised that it wouldn't be chock full of fancy designs and impressive tricks. My favorite soaps for personal use are always pretty similar, and so it should be no surprise that if you're out on a Sunday afternoon at your market table, that when shoppers come to you, and they're relatively your age and fit into your demographic, that you might have similar tastes. And so you know that when you really love one of the recipes that you make, there are going to be others out there who will die for it too, making it a popular recipe to stock on your shelves. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't know what other personalities like. The kids, they like the cupcakes, and your younger shoppers, they like novelty and color. But some of us more experienced consumers, well, we just like what we like. Today, I'm going to make my recipe for River Pebble. Now, it's one of my favorite products. This is a hot process, fairly easy for an intermediate method in soap making. And if you've caught this video and you're one of our many members over at thermalmermaid.com, you can find the full recipe and printable instructions right here. Scroll down on the members dashboard to Hot Process, click on that, then find River Pebble. Now these recipes, they're all in alphabetical order, so just scroll down to the R section and click on it, and you can instantly print everything that you need to make this at home. Now also remember, if you need a little bit more help, the members version of this video is slightly different with added information on my methods to really get the recipe to work for you, so it's not a copy of what you see here on YouTube. Okay, so let's talk about what goes into the River Pebble soap. With the oils melted, I'll add the lye water solution. Now both here are still pretty hot, and since this is going to be cooked down, there's no need to let the lye cool to room temperature. I'll get this completely emulsified so that the oils and the lye will bond together as quickly as possible. Once this is done, I'll really just spend the next hour and a half supervising the soap to make sure it stays combined and it doesn't cook out of control. Once it's in the cooker, it's very little work and nearly all supervision. Now I'm going to let this cook down for 20 to 30 minutes, and when I come back on the first pass, you're going to see what looks most common for the first stage of hot process soap making. You can see there's a little separation where the water had pooled to the edges, and here I'm just going to mix that back together and make sure everything is moved around, because the slow cooker, it won't cook everything evenly all the way through. So to keep the entire batch smooth, you just have to mix it up a bit. Then leave it alone to cook a little bit more. While we wait, I'm going to bring you over here and make some safflower powder. Now today I don't have any powder, I only have these dried petals, so I need enough of these soft dried petals to make about 3 spoons of powder. This will then become a light natural orange pebble looking colorant, and then we'll have a bit more left over for a contrast design. Now when you go ahead and buy this in the powdered form, you can bet that it'll be pretty pure, even powder, but here I'm going to dust it down, but also leave some pieces in there for a bit of orange speckle. Now if you aren't too accustomed to adding safflower powder in your cosmetics, this is known for aiding in eczema and psoriasis, and it's particularly high in vitamin E. Now it's often used as an oil. The safflower powder itself is mostly just used as a colorant, and it's typically not featured for its skincare properties, but it provides a variety of exquisite shades of colors. Now this can be consumed, and there's a ton of information out there for its holistic medicinal properties as a food as well. On the second pass, you can see some texture change that's happening here. Now it's become a rich honey color, and it's moving really quickly through the second stage. In fact, the second stage is a bit light and loose typically, but this is already past that, and we're already at the end of that stage and moving into the third. Now you don't always need to check in and identify every stage when you're cooking. Just make sure there's nothing expanding out of the pot. Make sure you're mixing it up. Just let it do its own thing. Now I'll prepare my colorant. Here I've brought 4 ounces of water to a simmer in my teapot, and I'm going to put in 1 teaspoon of powder and mix this down until it's completely blended. Now the color you'll see here is a deep saffron orange, but this amount of powder will give me a light orange-yellow soap, and then this way you'll be able to see my other natural additives. The soap's been cooking for about an hour and a half, and the gel stage has now set in. Now, if I show you what it looks like up close, you may be able to see that it's starting to get a bit of a translucent tone to it. Now, I could go further with this, but I wanted to start cooling so that I can move along with the rest of the additives, and the gelling will continue as the temperature is being brought down. So as I mix this up one final time in the pot, I've also removed the heat. Separating this out into two parts to create the design, I'm going to add in the saffron water to 1 part. You don't have to worry about adding so much water. This will evaporate over the cure time. And you can probably see that by blending down the saffron powder in water first, it will now give me a smooth color, where if we just put in the powder, there would have been nearly no chance that it would have blended through the soap while we're working at this texture. Next, I'm going to add a full tablespoon of dried aloe powder. Now I've hand dried and ground this so that I can get these bigger pieces of skin into my bars. If you do this at home, 7 large aloe leaves will give you just around 6 ounces of dried material. Now it's cheaper to buy the aloe already in powdered form, but if you do, you won't get those bigger dark pieces, and this is what I want in my design. But you will still get that beautiful aloe feel and quality to your bar if you used the packaged aloe powder. For the next several minutes as I work along, I want this to cool so we can get the fragrance into the soap under its flash point. The only really helpful way to do this is to disperse the heat by mixing and mixing, and this will also give you a view of how the texture is holding up. When this starts to set, it happens quickly, and you want to be able to incorporate all your ingredients. In the second half of my batch, I've added a tablespoon of white kaolin clay. This will act as a lighter colorant and give me a contrast to the orange, and the clay will contribute to the luxury quality of a bar that already smells like heaven. So I'll mix this in well and keep my eye on the texture at the same time. I'm going to start watching the temperature to see when it's dropped to below 125 degrees and help the cooling by dispersing the heat. Now I can smell the aloe powder, and if I didn't add a fragrance at all, this bar would have a light, pleasant, sweet aroma of aloe, which this also does carry into the fragrance that we're about to add to give it even a deeper dimension. The River Pebble fragrance is a bright men's fragrance that I've created combining popular fragrance oils. It has a fresh lemongrass with undertones of spruce and juniper and other outdoor aromas, and of course that aloe is embedded in there. It's a complete men's fragrance that women also love because it has a fresh lightness to it. So I find that both men and women alike enjoy it, but I originally intended it to be specifically for men. Once we've gotten this mixed completely, it's time to transfer it into the mold. Now take a peek at the clay side of this bar. The clay is more drying, and we didn't add extra water, so it's beginning to become firm, and I have to keep moving along before this becomes too thick. The light orange river pebble is the first side to be molded. Now the texture here is absolutely perfect, and it's just as simple as transferring the entire amount into the bottom of the mold. Now you might remember that I still have 2/3 of my saffron powder. Now this is going to be dusted over the top to make a pencil line and give me an effect of a crystal granite fissure in the bar that will separate the two parts. Now you can see I'm using a sturdy coffee filter which works beautifully to dust a pencil line over a large area. But unfortunately I didn't let my coffee filter dry well enough and the powder is becoming damp, so I'll just have to dust it freehand a little bit this time. Once this is finished, add the second half of the soap. The texture here is still sticky enough to mold together beautifully, but I was cutting it close. If your soap feels like it might be drying too much and it won't stick through the powder below it, then just spritz the saffron powder with rubbing alcohol until it's damp, and the 2 halves of soap will be just fine. Now here, I didn't feel that this was necessary for mine, so you can see that the soap can be on the brink of setting up, and it will mold just fine. Now I'm down to the last few minutes of this being workable, so I'm literally going to sculpt it in with my hands. And then after that, there's nothing left to do but allow this to set up for a day and then come back and slice it into pieces when we're done. After 24 hours, we're ready to cut, and you can quickly see how beautiful, natural, but still subtle this bar has turned out. No over-the-top designs, but a very deliberate, natural effect that smells like a fresh summer morning on the edge of a wild river. This is absolutely one of my favorite recipes, and there's always a bar of this in my shower. I hope you enjoyed the River Pebble hot process soap demonstration. You can go and grab our downloads if you're ready to make this at home, and if you have any additional questions or you need help with it, hop on over to the Facebook group where there are plenty of others who are familiar with this method and always ready to offer help. Now don't forget to hit like and subscribe for the next product, and I'll see you over in the forums at Thermal Mermaid.